Oh, welcome back. This must be part 4 of the Gotteswinter indicator holder. Part 1 was prepping some stock, and part 2 was making up the arm, which is in the clamp in the vise at the moment, gluing. Part 3 was making up the swivel pins that are glued into the arm, and now we're on to making the... Got to start with the knobs, because I've got an interesting idea about those. I just sent a text to Matty actually, and I've got this free cutting steel, and I was going to use some of that to make these knobs, which is what it calls for. But I said to him, I found a bit of dirty old brass in the bin, and I'll give it a quick brush up. And I said, brass or steel? And he immediately texted back and said, brass, because everyone's done steel. Good thinking. So I'll use brass. Years ago now on Tom Lipton's channel, Ox Tool Co., he did some knobs for travelling squareness indicator or something like that. Can't remember, but he did a fluted rim rather than knurled, and I like that idea. Quite often knurls get grime and dirt in them and they look a bit crap. I don't have a straight knurl tool anyway, so I've only got a diamond knurl. And I have used it before. I made this little aluminium knurled knob for the propane torch. But I think I'm going to try the flutes, and I've got another reason for that. I'll change the camera angle and show you. Well, here's why I'm thinking about making flutes for the little knobs, because I finally got a chuck mounted on my rotary table, and it was a bit of a saga because when I got this rotary table, I got it used, and it came with 3. I got it off Ted. That gave me all those tools, but and so yeah, I bought this used. These nuts that came with it are a little bit undersized for the slots, and the way I had to mount this chuck, I had to modify it actually. It was threaded in the back part way, and so in order to be able to screw it down to the table, I needed to drill those through for clearance for an M8, and then counterbore for cap screws, so I could go straight down into a T-nut. And now this chuck is actually slightly bigger than the table, so I'm gripping as far out on the table as I can get really. And these nuts were just hanging out slightly too much, so I couldn't travel past the lock. So what I did was I made a whole heap of that's what I did yesterday morning actually. I made some T-nuts, but these ones are longer and they have an offset hole, so the hole is in one end and they're longer to spread out the load. And so I can finally put round things on my rotary table. So the idea would be stick the knob on here with a bit of space underneath it and just rotate it round. I've got the indexing plates for this, and just plunge until I get as many flutes as I want. And I've got end mills that go down to, I think 2mm is my smallest one. I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Now this rotary table normally comes with a sort of a dial on here with a vernier scale along the top, and that allows you to know how many degrees you've moved the thing. But it's got an interchangeable set of 3 indexing plates that come as an extra, and these sector arms and this plunger. So given that there's a 90-to-1 worm wheel in here and I want 8 divisions on my job, I'm going to have to move it 11 1/4 turns between plungers. So on a 16 hole plate, that's 11 turns and 4 of the 16 holes, so 11 1/4. I'm only just noticing what a crappy finish I've got on the end of that. I'll have to put a sharp cutter in and try that again. So in order to get the sort of half the cutter outside the job and half inside, I'm going to move this over by the radius of this larger piece, which is 10mm. And the DRO makes that really easy. So that's 11mm, so I'm only cutting into the workpiece by 1mm. Let's give it a go. Yeah, that went well. I'm going to move it back to 10. Yep, perfect. Well, I made another one of those knobs, exactly the same, and I've given them a buff on the wheel, and I've also taken some of the other filing marks out of this arm piece. This was a bit, there were a few marks left in there. There still are a few. I may go back to that and improve that again, but it's less ugly now. And using exactly the same method, I made the clamping nut that's on the drawing. Now again, I didn't use a straightener. I used and I didn't use the same dimensions either. It was calling for 12.5 and I've used 14mm. I took an idea out of Max's suggestion. He said making this a little bit larger is a good thing, so you can grab hold of it with fat fingers. And yeah, that's 14. That works well. And I've just used a 2mm 2-flute end mill slot drill. Again on the rotary table, whilst this was part of the hex, I turned the features and drilled and tapped first, and the last thing I did was part it off the hex after these flutes were done. So I'm pretty pleased with how that's come out. It looks like a nice little, looks like a little piece of jewellery. Yeah. So that's the knobs done, swivel pins, the arm, the clamping nut. Basically we've got to get 2 washers out of this and the 2 square bits of chromoly out of those. That was the first time I'd used the indexing plates, by the way, on my rotary table, and gee, they make it a lot easier than having to use the degrees, minutes, seconds. I really like that method, and I'll be using that in future if I need to make gears or whatnot. Also having the chuck on the on the Rotary Table is a big upgrade. Just makes a lot more things possible, so I'm quite happy about that. Anyway, rambling on. Well, after a bit of a hiatus, I've picked up the project again, and we're now 6 parts out of 10 done. So 2 more square bits out of chromoly and 2 more washers, and then we're done. I got some stickers from Lance at Bundy Bear's shed, so thank you, Lance. They came very quickly, and as soon as I've made a second board, your stickers will go up on the board along with Mark Presling's that are waiting. I wanted to mention Tate as well. He's got a YouTube channel which is really good. It's full of interesting, lots of videos. They're all quite short and they're all very interesting. He's got some interesting gear. He's got a milling machine with a massive rotary table, a shaper, lots of stuff, and he's inventing things and trying to come up with new methods, and it's always entertaining. So he's only just clicked over the 100 subscribers mark, and I think he deserves a few more. So give him a watch, and if you like his stuff, why not subscribe? That's all from me. I'll sign off and see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.